Hey guys, my name's Gavin. Welcome back to a brand new video. Today, I'm going to be breaking down this Spanish guitar loop that I made inside of FL Studio. Pretty simple, cool loop. It's really full sounding. You guys are definitely going to be able to hear that as we get into the tutorial here. Thanks for clicking on the video. Hopefully I'm going to be able to teach you guys something today. But before we get into this, let's hit this bullseye here. Last video was a really good throw, so I'm kind of nervous today. Today might be the day that we had to regress a little bit, but that's all part of the process. Whether you're creating music or just anything, you're gonna have your ups and downs. We'll see what happens here. Maybe not, who knows? Okay, so a little down day. Follow me on Instagram at gavinhadley_. Let's do it. Okay, so before we do anything, I'm just gonna play you the final loop so you guys can get a little glimpse at what we're making today. Alright, so that's the loop. So normally I talk about like the whole structuring, like this aspect with the parallel processing at the end of the videos, but I'm going to talk about it at the beginning of the video this time because I feel like some people don't make it to the end of the video. So after I export the final loop, so I just have like everything playing here and then just one sound after another. Just giving like 4 bars of space to let the reverb strain out, so it's really easy for producers to chop stuff up without having to worry about it not cutting well. It gets rendered into one wave file right here. I duplicate this underneath it and then I make it unique as a sample by clicking this button and then make unique as a sample. You guys can't see it, but it's in like the top right. I pitch it up an octave and it's gonna sound like this without any effects. Clearly that's like not really good. It kind of sounds like a bug. So to fix that, I put an EQ on, kind of like how I do my vocals, just like drowned out the highs and the lows and just make it sound like it's underwater. So this is what I did for this EQ. So it's better, but you can kind of still pick up those harsh, like not good sounding frequencies. So to fix that further, we just put an EQ or a reverb on, and I just put the wet all the way up, the dry all the way down, and I mess with the separation knob here and it sounds like this. So it sounds a lot better, and it's really good to do this because it just sits really well underneath samples and makes them sound a lot more full. Now we can get into how I actually made this. So it actually all started in an Omnisphere guitar. It was the classic nylon guitar, and I did this little pattern here. Alright, so this actually got changed up a little bit when Miles played it on his guitar. When you play like on a real guitar, you can't really do this grace note in the chord here. So this grace note got moved up to like right here. And this is all in triplets. So that's something that a lot of people do when they make these Spanish guitar loops. So all you gotta do to turn it to triplets is go into your magnet knob here and then go to 1/3 beat or 1/3 step, whichever one you would like to use. And I'm pretty sure you can use like the 1/6 too, but 1/3 is pretty standard. So we just arpeggiate the chord progression in triplets. So if I change it to the grid, you can see that everything looks like it's on the grid now. Super simple chord progression in the scale of C sharp minor. And this also got changed. It got moved down. It got moved down to this because it was really hard for it to play on the guitar like that. So we're just basically going down the scale. Then we're utilizing this chord, which sounds super cool and dark. Basically, it's just the note that is underneath, like whatever your root note is, or for the most part, the bottom note in your first chord. So in our case, it's C. And all we do to do that is we put a note right here. It's 3 half steps down, three down, basically 3 spacings. Then we have one that is 2 spacings, and that creates this nice, super good sounding dark chord. Now I just have a bunch of like supporting notes in these areas that help like blend the chords together and create like a sense of movement and like a progression basically. I did this in one of my previous videos here. These are called chromatic notes. They're notes that are just right next to each other on the scale. They're super good for creating that dark feel. We're just going down the scale, keeping that same rhythm going, just moving the notes down as we go. And then we go between the chromatic notes here. As you can see, I'm a big fan of chromatic notes. I feel like they do a really good job of creating a dark, cool sounding sound. And this is what Miles played. And he has a pitched up version right here for like the top line. So I EQ'd out some of the low end. That's what it sounds like before the RC20 and the EQ. So just a subtle change there, and then I did for the vinyl was add a little bit of space to it, just to like give it a little bit of reverb sound without actually using like a reverb plugin. I like the way the space knob makes things sound. And I just messed with an EQ in here, boosted this frequency. This is something that you can do as like an alternative to using a tape plugin. It's especially good for like live instruments, because a lot of live instruments have a lot more noise in them. So this kind of like brings that out, but in like a vinyl-y kind of tape emulation plug-in way. Okay, so this is my vocal. This is a super cool thing that I did for this one. It kind of sounds like a flute, and I'll show you guys what my voice sounded like when I sung it, and then how I was able to transform it into like almost a flute sound. So this is what it sounds like without anything on it, just auto-tune and like a normal version of my voice, not pitched up or anything. Okay, so I basically sung it like in that kind of frequency. So it sounds like 645 AR right now, but if you trust the process here, we're gonna make it sound like a flute. So we have this Verdi EQ too, just cutting out the high and low frequencies, but you'll see here that I added like a little bit of a peak right here. I really had to experiment for this one. So it goes from sounding this like to like that. So it's already like super different, but now we use these two plugins to help further our differences here. So we have this I keep saying EQ, this reverb here. Again, doing that same technique that I did earlier with the parallel processing thing. Sounds like this. And I have a little alter boy here, and I put the pitch knob all the way up, so it's giving it like another octave. Doesn't really do much, but it's there. Kind of sounds like a flute now. Like a heavily affected flute. So this is the MIDI for the flute. It's the Jubal flute from Contact, a super cool flute. A lot of sample makers use it when they're making these type of loops. We just go down the scale here. I actually sung this. I conveniently made a video on it. It's my last video, but basically you can like sing into the microphone and then make that turn into MIDI notes. Just going down the scale here. So these chromatic notes again. And doing like fast note changes like this one is another super easy way to help make that Spanish guitar sound. And we have like a little like grace note right here at the start. Definitely go crazy with your grace notes when you're making melodies with the Jubal flute too. It does a super good job at making those sound like super realistic and just nice sounding. It's like this note isn't even in scale. It sounds pretty bad this when you like play it on its own, but since we're moving up so fast, the Jubal flute kind of goes in and it because like this is what like real flute players do, I'm pretty sure. Like the Jubal flute goes in and makes it sound like natural and like cool sounding. So yeah, I really wanted to like keep this pattern like simple but like memorable at the same time, and I felt like this last sequence here did a really good job at like capping off the overall sequence. I talk about this in all my videos. A good way to like see if your melodies are good, I guess it's like a visual thing you can do. It's like, does it look like a wave? Does it have like a lot of movement up and down? So this one is like a really cool example. So it goes all the way down, up a little bit. It's like the stock market, and then it goes all the way up again and then down. And effects that I put on that. So I put a Wolf compressor on, and this is like what I do whenever I use this flute. I put the comp all the way up, and this is what it sounds like without it. So it doesn't sound bad, but it really makes it sound a lot more old when you put the Wolf compressor on. And then we have crystallizer. I used the muffled up octave thing to give it like a little bit more high end. It's kind of hard to hear, but it's there. And then we have reverb, just a little bit of reverb. Mess around with these knobs, kind of just fill it out a little bit more, blend it into the sample a little bit more. And now we have a bass line here, just following our root notes that we talked about earlier in the Omnisphere guitar. I mess around with the velocities a lot here too. And then something that I like to do to add a little bit more contrast with the bass line is like putting the last note or one of the notes in the bass line up an octave. Just a little bit of comp here and Wolf compressor again, and then some lo-fi, and then a radiator, just because I want it to punch a little bit harder. This is what it sounds like without it and with it. So it punches a little bit harder. You'll see that a lot of these effects that I put on are just subtle changes. Some of these things that I do you won't be able to hear if you're like listening through a phone speaker and stuff for the obvious reasons. After this, we have a Labs string sound using chromatic notes here. Originally this note was down here, but Miles suggested to put it up to a G sharp. So I really like these chromatic notes again for these dark melodies. They do a really good job at capturing the dark feeling. And so you hear the string and then so it was a little quiet for my liking. So I went in here to the limiter and I just boosted this gain knob, and then like later I ended up moving it a little bit down. But I feel like when you go in here and you boost the gain knob for like these realistic sounds, like the string, it does a good job of just bringing out more character in it. And then I mess with the stereo separation knob to like blend it in the background a little bit more. This knob is super useful for that. I have this whistle in here. It's a one shot. I didn't really like how the end of this vocal that I did here, I didn't really like how it finished. So I had something in my mind that I wanted to play out. And since we made this sound kind of like a flute, it kind of sounds similar to this whistle. Like this whistle has a little bit more texture to it, but in the grand scheme of things, like when you're listening to the sample, I think these two things do a really good job bouncing off of each other. This is what it sounds like. So literally just going straight down the scale. We don't even like miss any notes. It's just straight down. We have start with chromatics, and then we end with chromatics, and then we just have this note in the middle. Don't be afraid to experiment, because I know it took me a while to get this right. And effects that I put on that, reverb, I added a lot of reverb to it, actually like all the way, and then separation knob too. This is what it sounds like without that, and with it. Alright, so yeah, that's that sound. I just have this one last sound. It's a pillow vocal. It's from a one-shot kit that I am working on. I just put a lot of reverb on it to blend it in again. Basically the final loop. I'll play it for you guys again, unmute all these. I already talked about the parallel processing thing at the beginning of the video. Thank you guys for making it to this point in the video. If you made it to this point in the video, hopefully you were able to learn something today. Comment down below what you guys would like to see from me next, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.